A rusted vintage Ford Bronco sat in the dusty diner lot, its chrome gleaming under the midday sun. An old man, his frame weakened but his eyes sharp, slowly moved from his truck, a worn cane in his hand. A group of burly bikers pulled up, their loud engines drowning out the quiet afternoon. A snarl, a shove, and the old man stumbled, his groceries spilling across the hot pavement. The bikers laughed, their callous disrespect a stain on the peaceful day. They didn't know who they had just wronged. They had no idea what was coming. The old man, Thomas, felt the harsh push against his back, a sudden shove that sent him off balance. His cane slipped, his groceries tumbled, and he fell to his knees on the sun-baked asphalt. A cruel laugh echoed from the group of bikers towering over him, their leather vests emblazoned with a skull and crossed wrenches. They were a storm of noise and disrespect in the quiet afternoon. Thomas, a disabled veteran, a man who had faced true storms, felt a familiar weariness settle over him, a deep sadness at the ugliness of the world. He remained on his knees, his hands resting on the rough ground, not in a plea, but in a quiet moment of internal strength. He looked up at them, his eyes holding a depth they could never understand. The bikers, emboldened by his silence, continued their mockery. They kicked at his spilled groceries, their boots scuffing the crushed carton of milk. One of them, a man with a wild beard and a sneer, leaned in close. "Lost your marbles, old man. Maybe you should stay inside where you can't get hurt." The words were a bitter insult, meant to wound. They had no idea that they were speaking to a man who had already faced more pain and sacrifice than they could ever imagine. Thomas didn't respond. He simply looked at the man, his silence a shield more powerful than any weapon. The biker, frustrated by the lack of a reaction, took a step back, a new wave of insults on the tip of his tongue. Thomas's mind, in that moment, drifted back decades to another time, another place. He was not on the pavement of a quiet diner, but in the humid, thick air of a foreign jungle. He was a young man then, full of fire and a deep sense of purpose. He remembered the smell of rain-soaked earth and the distant scent of burning wood. His mission had been to provide medical aid under fire, to be a source of calm and comfort in the midst of chaos. He was a corpsman, a silent hero in the shadow of war. He recalled his friend Marcus, a strong man with a quiet humor. They had made a promise to each other, a simple, unbreakable vow. They would always have each other's backs, no matter what. Thomas's sacrifice had been immense. A landmine, a flash of white-hot light, and then the crushing pain that had forever changed the course of his life. He remembered lying on the ground, the world spinning, Marcus's face above him, a mixture of fear and determination. Marcus had carried him for miles, through enemy lines, through pain and exhaustion, until he was safe. Marcus had saved his life. And in the years that followed, Thomas had carried the physical scars, but he also carried the memory of his friend, who had not made it out. Thomas had dedicated his life to honoring that sacrifice. He worked with veterans' charities, mentored young people, and lived a life of quiet dignity. The bikers, in their arrogance, saw only a weak old man. They saw easy prey, a target for their petty cruelty. They saw his cane, his slow movements, and a flash of pity-fueled ridicule in their eyes. They did not see the hero, the man who had faced down terror with a medic bag in his hand. They did not see the quiet honor that defined his very being. The crowd of onlookers at the diner, a mix of families and weary travelers, saw what was happening, but they did nothing. They averted their eyes, their silence a heavy shared burden. The moral injustice hung in the air, a silent accusation against them all. Thomas remained still, his gaze fixed on the broken milk carton. He saw not the spilled milk, but a memory of a field hospital, the hurried, frantic movements of a surgeon trying to save a life. He felt the cold shock of the rain from so long ago. The bikers continued their taunts, their words a steady drum of disrespect. Thomas's silence, however, was not one of submission, but of a quiet, unyielding strength. It was a strength born of unimaginable pain and an unwavering purpose. Just as the lead biker was about to deliver a final, vicious kick, a powerful black Ford F-250 pulled into the lot. The truck was spotless, a stark contrast to the dust and grime of the other vehicles. From it, four men in crisp black t-shirts emerged. They were not large, but they moved with a silent, disciplined efficiency that instantly commanded attention. They wore no logos or emblems, only a quiet intensity in their eyes. The lead biker turned, his sneer fixed on his face, but it quickly faded as he met their steady, unwavering gazes. The men looked at him, then at the man on the ground, then back at the biker. It was a wordless judgment, a silent condemnation. The men in black shirts didn't speak. They simply walked to Thomas, their movements fluid and purposeful. One of them knelt down and offered a hand to Thomas. Thomas accepted the hand and was helped to his feet. The man who had helped him up knelt and began to pick up the spilled groceries. Another man went to the Bronco and opened the door. The third man, the apparent leader of the group, walked toward the bikers. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't shout. He simply looked at the lead biker with an unwavering stare. The biker's sneer was gone now, replaced by a nervous uncertainty. "He's a SEAL," he whispered, his voice trembling. "They all are." The biker's bravado shattered. The leader of the SEALs, a man with a quiet intensity that filled the space, spoke in a low voice. "Some things are worth more than an apology. You just stepped on a man who carried a friend out of a firefight. You just disrespected a hero who earned the right to be here." He didn't shout, but his words landed with the weight of a hammer. The bikers, defeated by the sheer moral force of the moment, mounted their bikes and rode away in silent shame. They didn't look back. The crowd of onlookers, who had been silent moments ago, now began to murmur. They looked at Thomas, a new respect in their eyes. They looked at the men in black, and then back to Thomas, and understood. The silent heroes had come to the aid of another silent hero. The leader of the SEALs simply nodded at Thomas, a gesture of quiet, shared honor. The other men had already packed up his groceries. They gave a silent, respectful salute before getting back in their truck and driving away. Thomas stood there watching them go, the weight of his cane a familiar comfort in his hand. A young boy from the crowd approached him and, with a small voice, said, "Thank you for your service." Thomas smiled, a quiet, knowing smile that reached his eyes. He had faced down disrespect and hatred, not with violence or anger, but with the quiet dignity of a man who knew his own worth. The silent acts of honor he knew always spoke the loudest. The story of Thomas is a quiet reminder that the greatest battles are often fought in silence, and that true strength is not found in a loud voice, but in a quiet heart. We invite you to share your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us where you are watching this from. Your support helps us tell more stories that honor silent heroes like Thomas.